Scanning for audio.
Welcome to the Tin Dog Podcast. Now, as you can probably hear, my throat is playing up yet again. So if you are still playing the Tin Dog Podcast drinking game, well, there's your opportunity to have a swift half. Now, first off, I just want to say that there's been a bit of news from Big Finish. Big Finish, for those of you who already know, are the people who bring us the audio Doctor Who's, but they also bring us, well, some other fantastic stuff like Survivors and Blake 7. Well, they've just managed to get the rights to The Prisoner. Now, I'm an enormous Prisoner fan, hence the reason that I sign off every single episode with, "Be seeing you." Which is, of course, a catchphrase from The Prisoner. And not what annoys a lot of people because they go, "You're an audio podcast? Why do you always say 'be seeing you' at the end?" Well, it's a reference to The Prisoner. The Prisoner is going to be in production in boxed sets. Now, there's a few issues with this, but I am exceptionally excited about it. It's going to be fantastic. Big Finish are nearly always true to the source and are particularly talented at recreating stuff from the past. So, is it time for a wish list or something you're going to worry about? Perhaps it's a bit of both. So bear with me as I talk about something that isn't Doctor Who. The Prisoner was a TV series that followed on from, well, let me take you back to the mid-60s. You've got a fantastic theme tune. You've also got Patrick McGoohan, who, at the time, had spent quite a few years playing Danger Man on TV. Danger Man was your fairly, not exactly run-of-the-mill, secret agent. Patrick McGoohan had played this secret agent for several months. For many years, and then he went along to Lord Lou Grade and said, "I've got an idea for a show." And Lou Grade being, well, not the man his son became. Yes, it's that Michael Grade. Lord Lou Grade was a maverick, somebody who wanted something different, somebody who wanted something in colour. This is before colour TV, but they knew what was coming. And he went, "Right, you've made me a lot of money as Danger Man, you go away, you go and make this." It's not the sort of thing that would happen these days. And that is, of course, a massive oversimplification. But that is basically how it happened. Now, McGoohan was the sort of person who'd been approached to play Bond twice. He had the good looks that could be Bond. He had the sort of voice that could pull it off. He was in Columbo at least 3 times. He was a bit of an enigma. And a bit of an enigma almost to himself. But that's McGoohan the man, not the character he was playing. But the character he was playing was, in many respects, an extension of himself, in the way that Tom Baker is the 4th Doctor. He doesn't have a time machine, but he is slightly wacky and slightly off-centre. So if you can see a character as an extension of someone's self, well, that's kind of what we got with The Prisoner. Now, there are stories in Danger Man that influenced The Prisoner later on, but I'm getting ahead of myself. There is one episode where the character in Danger Man ends up in a small village which has been organised to interrogate people. This is, of course, based on a real event, a real place that was used to interrogate people in the Second World War. Now, these are just the ideas that give birth to The Prisoner. The Prisoner is something so much more, something deeper. I've been arguing and thinking about doing a Prisoner podcast for some time, because The Prisoner itself, although it was only 17 episodes, is something so much more than just a TV show. It is almost the very definition of cult. Filmed, in the large part, in a small North Wales village called Portmeirion. I went there on my wedding. It is something that I feel is incredible. It has an Italian feel to it and is well worth seeking out. But I'm digressing, as you know I will. Basically, they're going to remake this fantastic, odd Twin Peaks of a show. something that messes with your head, something that has an ending that makes Lost's ending make you look like it's making sense. The characters have no real names in The Prisoner. The central character, who isn't the secret agent seen in Secret Agent or D&D Danger Man, he's just called Number 6. Number 6 was an extension of McGowan, and of course we end up with a whole characterization. Oh, just go and watch it. 17 episodes, you know it makes sense. It's fantastic. You will be disappointed. You see, that's how I came to it. Back in the 80s, Channel 4 decided to repeat The Prisoner. My dad came into my room and said, watch this. You'll like it. You'll hate the end. And he was 100% correct. I sat up late into the night watching every episode of The Prisoner, transfixed by one man's attempt to escape. It came across at the beginning as just another secret agent story with a bit of a sci-fi twist. But then episodes began to be metaphors. They began to deal with concepts of individuality, of freedom, and what it means to be free, and what it means to give up your freedom on any level. Things like reality TV were just ideas, concepts that no one had even dealt with, and these were shows that were just taking them apart. Education and what it means to learn, know, and indeed think about things. All of these things were dealt with on some level. The character of Number 6 was played by McGowan. He was an ex-secret agent who happened to look a lot like the guy from the other show. But he wasn't. He'd resigned from British intelligence and ended up being interrogated, and all they wanted to know was why he resigned. And he didn't want to tell them, because he didn't know who he was telling. And more importantly, why should he tell them? There is spurious 60s technology, the sort of thing you might see in an Austin Powers episode, but this was played completely straight. There are some more, and I hate using the word surreal stories, but there are some that just mess with your head. There are allegorical stories, episodes that are just plain weird, and then of course there's the last two-parter. In charge of the village is Number 2. Does the existence of a Number 2 mean that there is a Number 1? Well, that's a question that should have been asked all along. So into this universe, we have Big Finish turning up and going, here we are, a weird place, let's do this. Now, question 1. Patrick McGowan didn't want to do any more Prisoner? Patrick McGowan is now dead? How are we going to have more stories? You've got a basic choice. The Prisoner is about someone who is in prison and is trying to escape. In the 2009 remake, or reimagining, or whatever you want to call it, of The Prisoner, 6 episodes long, Ian McKellen played the character of Number 2, the person in charge of the village. He would make a brilliant Number 2, superb casting, but they just went for somebody else playing Number 2. There was a comic adaptation called ABC, I believe, where Patrick McGowan's Number 6 became Number 2 in a deserted village. This is something I feel they should do. I think they should get a new Number 6, but go away from it. Saying that it's the same Number 6 just wouldn't make sense. You get a new character with new feelings, new emotions, new motivations. I suggest, with all due respect, Big Finish, that you set it now, not in the 60s, but you have the village that is the 60s, in a kind of Life on Mars kind of a way. You also have a new Number 6 that is female, someone who, again, was working for military intelligence and then resigns, and then they end up in the village and they're trying to escape, but all of the technology and all of the ideas and the whole place is set up exactly the same way as it was. The old village covered in cobwebs comes to life. Feel free. All of the old signs, all of the old sound effects, Rover, the mini moke, all of these things are brought back to life to interrogate this new Number 6 and find out why she resigned. Casting, well, I could come up with names left, right and centre, but that's not important. But wouldn't you just love old Sixie to be Number 2? Any of the Doctors would be fantastic. McGann does passionate shouting far too well. He would be an ideal Number 6 if you were just going for a straight remake and recast, but that's just too obvious. It's just too ordinary. you want something different so that you can give us something the same. And that's how reimaginings work. So I'm not sure if anybody out there would even be interested in a Prisoner podcast. But me and Luke from To Midwip have often talked about producing some marvellous show together. And that would be it. That would be the Prisoner podcast, dealing with the original 17 stories, and then with perhaps the remake. But what else would we talk about? Well, now there's this. Big Finish are returning. So perhaps one day I'll get round to doing a Prisoner podcast. Perhaps I'll do it alone. Perhaps I'll stick it as part of the Tin Dog podcast. We just don't know. But until then, be seeing you.
You've been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast, available on RSS, iTunes, Stitcher, Audio Boom and Tumblr. Doctor Who and its associated works are copyright of the BBC. No infringement is intended. You can contact the show, donate, buy merchandise or find out more about my other projects by visiting the Tin Dog Podcast homepage and clicking on the links. The Tin Dog Podcast is a founder member of the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance.